Welcome to today's episode. I'm excited about our conversation, not just because we have one of aviation industry's most influential leaders with us, but because we're about to dive into some fascinating insights on leadership, on innovation, and the future of aviation. My guest today is Pieter Elbers, the CEO of IndiGo. Peter, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, Kunal.
I've been wanting to have this conversation for some time now, and I know our listeners are extremely eager to know about aviation, but more importantly, they want to know your leadership style. But if I peel it further, they really want to know who you really are, right? Because you have that kind of enigma. And throughout the podcast, we're going to talk about that. Whenever I start my podcast, which is Talk with Kunal Vasudeva, I start with basically where it all began for my guest, right? For you, give us a glimpse of your childhood. If I have to just take you back memory lane, give us a glimpse of your childhood.
Wow, that's long ago, Kunal.
Yeah.
I'm 54, so I need to go back long in time.
Yes.
I was born in close to Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, obviously. I must say I had a very middle-class type of childhood. Wonderful parents, very supportive. I have two younger brothers, so we were sort of growing up with, school at weekdays and doing sports in the weekend, and I guess was the early childhood. Then I moved on to university at the age of 17 and sort of started.
And was that in Netherlands itself?
Yeah, started my own sort of more independent part of the journey. So
away from Rotterdam.
In between we moved to another place, so we had a bit of some mobility, I guess. That had become a bit the story of my life, mobility to different places. And again, wonderful parents, two younger brothers with whom I go along very well. Did my study, then went into the military, then started to work, and today I'm here. So fast forward.
But tell me, if I just for a second, if you close your eyes and think about those Rotterdam years, those growing up years, have they influenced you to who you are today? And the reason I ask you this is, for sure, if you look at me, my early childhood is who I am today. I would not trade that for anything in the world, right? But for a lot of people, they have literally erased those memories. But for you, are you, I would say, when you look back to the person that you are today, you would say that my early childhood really has influenced me or toughened me to the kind of person that I am today?
Well, I would say generically, I'm a strong believer in that. You cannot undo your past, right? You cannot not sort of, you can grow, you can develop, but you cannot undo. So I'm sure that somewhere, conscious or unconscious, it had its impact and it had its influence. And I think my parents always sort of supported me in, you do whatever you believe in and whatever you feel like, and if you want to do this, that's okay, as long as you feel it, and the other way around. So I would say that encouragement without being dominant on what that direction or that choice should be, for sure has had an impact on me. And my two younger brothers had, of course, the very same upbringing. I mean, we're 2 years apart and another 2 years apart, so pretty close, less than 2 years actually. And they walked a very different sort of career path. So I think that's the encouragement to do what you want to do has of course influenced me. And as long as you do what you believe in, you should give it a shot. You should give it a try. And I think that belief, and then we'll support you. Again, I was 17 when I moved, and meanwhile we lived in 2 other places. But when I moved and I started to live by myself and go to college, and I guess at that point in time it was probably, it was just, if you feel like that's a good thing to do, we'll support you, do it. And I think that entire philosophy somewhere deep down has become pretty much a part of me.
And that becomes your DNA as well.
Exactly,
right?
in taking up new challenges, new opportunities, and
tell me, do you often find yourself, and I say it again, my own reflections about myself, if I have a tough situation or a tough decision to make within my company, I often go deep inside, and I see again what really had happened, how did I overcome those situations in my early life, and I use those inferences and I use those trappings and learnings to make these decisions today. Do you often reflect the same way when you're taking decisions?
Probably more implicitly rather than explicitly.
Got it.
So, when you have difficult choices or difficult decisions to make, I typically rely a lot on I guess what one would call gut feel, or so I rely a lot on that in combination with sounding out different people and getting different inputs. I'm not sure if I'm very explicit. Let me go back in time. 10 years ago, I had this challenge, and this is the way I overcome it. I don't think so much like that, but more, my gut feeling says this should be the direction.
That's the logical deduction in that context.
Exactly.
Right?
Rather than making it very explicit.
Got it. Aviation came to you very early. Did you start off with aviation?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I jokingly say to people, aviation for me has been a bit like the good old Eagles song, Hotel California. You can check in, but you can never check out. So, I did my college and logistics, then I moved into the army, which at that time was still sort of mandatory part of the Dutch system. And then I had different job offers, and one of them was at KLM, and I just felt like, let me try it. It was a different part of the country, so I had to move again, and that was my Hotel California moment. I checked in and I never checked out. So it's not like from my childhood. I think my first flight I made when I was 18 or 19. So. Relatively late at that point in time, and I had no sort of family connections or anything like that in relation to aviation. I just got into it. My bachelor in logistics was a natural sort of element to it, and
so was aviation your first job?
It was my first job.
Wow.
Yeah, that's maybe it's the
Mine,
non-ability of doing something else.
Mine too. 1992, my aviation was my first job, and I stuck to aviation for about 20 years.
So it has such an incredible variety of different roles and different functions, and the combination of business to consumer.
True.
The fact that people are making a difference, the fact that it's capital and labor intensive, the fact that it's has this still, and I made countless of flights to countless of different destinations, but still I'm excited to sort of disembark somewhere in a total different spot where you embarked and find yourself literally in a different place.
So, to the non-aviation people, and I often say this, I said, you really do not own anything. You do not own the airport.
No.
You do not own the ramp site. You just own the aircraft where you can actually control the services. Rest, everything is done in an external environment, and you infuse that experiences. I think it just takes so much of an effort.
Yeah. It's a complex business from many aspects, and of course the incredible importance of safety. So it's a complex business in itself. But the product, and I've gone through that in different parts of your career. You know, people say, why do you stay? I think the product itself, you know, you need to have a passion for the product you're delivering. And what we are delivering as an airline, you know, it's technically speaking, it's transportation and safe transportation. But emotionally, it's much more than just transportation. And, you know, to board a plane could be international, but it could be even in India itself, you know, to leave Delhi and to arrive in Leh, which is just a little over an hour, 1 hour 20 flight. You're in a total different world. That emotion is a fantastic thing.
Yeah, so right. I'm definitely going to delve into this later, because I'm assuming when you joined aviation right after the university, you would have joined at a level which is here, and you grew up the ranks to be the president and CEO of KLM before coming to India. Take us through that journey, because this is incredible.
Yeah, I've been blessed and very fortunate with opportunities which were given to me, and leaders who had both the courage, the patience, and the belief in, you know, just try it and we'll support you along the way. So I started at the ramp at Schiphol Airport. I still remember walking there, and on the ramp you had these big 747s. You were walking underneath, and you have that sort of early morning, and then customers from all parts of the world connecting at Schiphol Airport, and have that. So, I mean, speaking about joining, that was the moment I felt incredibly sort of proud, and you know, you join much more than a company. You join a passion.
For sure. And I remember the 90s Schiphol, and I'm again talking from an India perspective, right, to Schiphol, and not because you were already there. According to me, my early tryst with international flying, I think, was mid-90s, and Schiphol was my first transitioning airport. We were supposed to go to Lausanne from there. By far the best airport. When I compared it, of course, today you have far bigger airports, but Schiphol Airport, I think it was way ahead of its time.
No, it was, and I think the KLM in combination with Schiphol had developed a system, and when I joined in '92, it was well established, and we further built it from there. But that journey of joining at the ramp for a couple of years, then I moved to network planning, sort of head office type of, where you really go into what I call almost like the very sort of logistic nerve center of the airline, which is great. Then I moved international. I had the privilege of living and working in Italy, Greece, and Japan. Very different countries. Very great learning experience.
But was that more from the sales side?
Yeah, sales and mostly sales and a bit of operations, but mostly sales. Then I came back and run the network and alliances scheduling part, and then operations, chief of operations, and then CEO. So again, I've been very fortunate and blessed with leaders who gave me the opportunity at every time a relatively young age.
And just before you left KLM, tell me how large was the fleet size?
Well, when KLM, I became CEO in 2014, and then I left in 22, so that was for 8 years. The fleet size was around 200, but a very different company as compared to IndiGo. And I'm sure we come to IndiGo. But it had 200 planes, 65 wide bodies, and for the rest narrow bodies. So, I mean, KLM is sort of that sixth freedom carrier connecting. And in the absence of any domestic flights, by definition, it's all international.
Correct.
And that was a 11 plus billion turnover company with 35 million customers on an annual basis. So in terms of customers, it was significantly smaller than IndiGo. In terms of revenue, it's significantly larger. We had a huge maintenance facility, 5,000 people in the maintenance, huge cargo facility. So a very different company.
But from a route planning network, tell me, were they largely European Union and the Americas, or was it evenly distributed, let's say, to Asia and Singapore?
No, it's a very global company. So out of the network, there was a little short of 100 European destinations, 80-ish, something like that, and around 60 long-haul destinations. And that was, typical. I mean, Delhi is a great example. Delhi to Amsterdam, and then onward to to the US and
True.
to Europe and all.
It was the hub.
That was still there,
Yeah.
and I think that sort of logistics center was there, and that for me had gone through all the ranks, had gone through the different parts of the organization, and then at that point in time in 2014 to be able to lead that company with 100 years of heritage and history.
True.
With a huge impact also on the Dutch economy, in relative size as compared to the overall group.
When you took over the helm, was KLM in alliance with Northwest at that point in time?
No, that was way earlier.
That was way earlier, right?
So that was in the
90s. Correct.
So that was way earlier, and then Air France KLM was created in 2004.
True.
2004, and I became CEO in 2014. So that was already in that configuration.
It was already KLM. Air France and KLM was in that configuration.
Yeah, and that was sort of a structure with the companies Air France and KLM running it, and then we had a group structure also with that part.
Pieter, interestingly, you spoke about the fact that obviously there was twists with network planning, sales, just about every element of aviation, and you would have had that exposure. You also mentioned that you got lucky and there were people who looked at you, gave you those opportunities. But there was something about you that Pieter rose to the top, and let's say the others, of course, they may have been good. But what was that? Because this requires endless sacrifices. You just can't rise to the top unless you say. So according to me, like if I look at me today, the biggest sacrifice that I do is with time.
Yeah.
And that time affects family, that time affects health, that time affects just the mental balance as well, right? Because you're always out there. And then you put aviation into the whole system because it's so intensive, right? You must have seized all those opportunities. And was time that one element that you also sacrificed?
I would say yes, but I'm not sure if the word sacrifice is the right word. It's how you allocate time,
trade-off,
and it's a trade-off you make. And of course, when you look back, you say you missed part of being with your kids and all. But there's other and more jobs where that's happening. So I always sort of have some reservations or hesitation, if you wish, to emphasize it too much.
Okay.
If you're at the Navy and you're on the ship for
you're
6 months,
the same thing.
you do the very same thing, right? So there's lots of other jobs where that happens as well. So I think where the most important part probably is how do you manage your energy levels and how you keep that energy, and therefore that word sacrifice is a word you make a trade-off and you make a balance and make sure that the endless hours you put in and the endless work you do, if you see that as a sacrifice,
trade-off.
It's
but is that mental resilience as well? The fact is, you draw that inner strength.
Yeah, right? and you draw energy from various from all the other parts of the job which come to that, and I think that drawing of energy is, at least for me, it's something I'm very mindful about, and making sure that there's parts in your job. I'm sure you have the same, Kunal. There's part of your job you say, okay, I have to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's part of your job which gives you an immense sense of enjoyment and energy and all. Now, and you need to find that balance.
Yeah, so right. Like for the last, I would say 10 years, since 2014, KLM and now, of course, IndiGo, you've been in a very powerful role, right? I just want to understand from you, how can someone be so also powerful and also humble at the same time? What does it take? Because this is and I tell you why, Pieter. This is, I think I've met you about 4 times. I think various forums now here at ISH as well. Yeah. And I know a lot of IndiGo people, as you rightly know, and they say the same thing about you, that he is so humble and he leads through, I would call that humility. So my question to you is, again, how can a leader be also powerful and at the same time also humble?
I think at aviation, and I say aviation mostly because I lack the knowledge of a lot of other businesses. As you know, I've never done something else. But it is really, and therefore it's one of the values of IndiGo. It's the power of we. Without the pilot, a plane won't leave. Without the technician, a plane won't leave. Without the people doing the planning, we don't have any schedule. Without the folks buying the planes, it wouldn't work. So at the end of the day, it is all these, in this case, 37,000 colleagues of IndiGo who make their journey, and I consider myself to be one of them.
Yeah.
Who happens to have a different role with a different set of responsibilities and all, but I happen to be one of them.
Yeah.
And being one of them eventually, I think, and that gives me an enormous sense of enjoyment to go into people's sort of jobs and see, what are you doing? What are you doing here? And what is the type of job you're doing? And if you engage then in a discussion, you'll find that we have incredible talents and people who put their best foot forward and work in often very challenging situations. And I think that interaction, whatever label you give it, but that interaction, I think, is at least what gives me energy.
Yeah, and I see you as an outsider, Peter, right? As an outsider who watches you, consumes perhaps you on LinkedIn, and I see you literally every week at a very different station, maybe sometimes wearing very traditional outfits in those kind of stations, and you have immersed yourself in that whole culture and vibrancy of India, and then that kind of it shows in you, and that's what people are talking about you.
But that's probably circling back to what we said earlier on the energy part.
You draw energy from them.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. And sometimes, when I go to these stations and I go out on a Friday or a Saturday morning and I just spend some time there listening to them, seeing what they're doing and get a proper understanding of what really is going on. That's where you see sort of the, it's just supplementing a lot of the stuff you hear at the office. So that's incredibly insightful. And usually when you go, they say, thank you so much. This was very, very nice and we really appreciate it. And I often say to them, you have no idea how much this energizes for me as well. Yeah. And to see the stories of, people making their way in the company, people growing themselves. And then if you have the opportunity, and that's really the way I see it, if you have the opportunity to live and work in probably one of the most, if not the most, diverse countries in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
Then you better embrace it and enjoy it.
No, if you just put Africa aside, and that's literally several countries, but this is like 29 countries within.
Exactly.
Yeah, you see, it's not a country; it's masquerading as a continent, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and then the incredible variety, the pride really in the different parts, and I'm not I don't have any judgmental approach to any of that. You submerge into those parts, and these visits and things are incredibly inspiring, enriching for me. And then to listen what they do. I mean, last year when we had these floodings in Chennai airport, I went there on the next Saturday to sit with the team to hear the personal stories, how they were supporting each other, how they were helping each other, how one took charge of the food distribution, the other took charge of transportation. That in itself. So I fly back on that Saturday night and say, I'm so proud of my colleagues. That's I guess the experience one would have.
Right, you're so right. Especially like when you take Indian School of Hospitality, ISH, right? And we are building a new category of business and hospitality education. And for the last 8 years, the kind of people that I've worked with, I tell you, Peter, I reflect in their halo of what they bring to the table, sacrifices they bring. Because, it's very difficult in a complex environment like India.
Correct.
And then you take education, which is highly regulated, like aviation, build a new category, and it's just them. And to the fact that you're reflecting in their halo, so the success is their success, and you're just sitting on the chair talking about it.
Well, I guess that says a lot about the vibrancy of India in general, and the ambition and vibrancy and dynamics of a lot of the people. Yeah.
Now, when you look at aviation, and now I'm going to perhaps talk about the Indian aviation. When you look at the KLM and let's say, Netherlands, European Union, they were a developed nation even in the 1990s. Right?
Yes.
I don't call myself a developing nation. I don't like that term. I call myself, I like to refer to India as an ascending economy, not a
Fair
developing economy,
Yeah.
right? Aviation in India, when it's on an ascension, the way we are right now, it has a multiplier effect on the economy, right? There is tourism, there is infrastructure, and because you are connecting right now, industries are coming because of you. Contrary to, let's say,
Yeah.
KLM, it was a developed nation already, right? When you look at the multiplier effect in India, where do you see the IndiGo story?
Yeah. Well, maybe before I go to, you're right. KLM is a company with a much longer history in an economy which has already reached a certain sort of level. But even there, the impact of the network of KLM for international companies to choose Amsterdam as their European headquarters,
So right.
for students to come, for international companies. So even that was there. And very strong, and a lot of research was done to those numbers. I would say in India it's even stronger, because the part where it differs, I would say, from many of the European countries, is that new air connectivity in cities are really, I would say, exponentially supporting the economy. I was in Durgapur a few weeks back, and I mean, that airport is relatively new. We fly now to initially 5, I think now we do 8 cities connected directly to Durgapur. And then speaking to the people, what does it do in terms of economic spin-off? The figures, international use figures, is every dollar or rupee invested in aviation brings $3 or rupees back to the economy. Every job in aviation is 6 into surrounding.
And it's not necessarily tourism. It's
No.
also about industries putting up factories there, logistics.
Suppliers. I mean, it's a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I would say that is a average number, which is globally and is by some international standards are there. I would say for new connectivity in India, those numbers are even higher.
True.
So the 1 to 3 for the investment ratio is higher. The 1 to 6 for the job ratio is higher. So the sheer excitement and the positive feedback we get on the 400 domestic routes with IndiGo now is operating, that is really creating, I would say, a positive momentum whereby IndiGo obviously is benefiting from the ascending economy of India. But IndiGo is also partly a driver and accelerator, if you wish, for that ascending economy.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right on that. From that perspective, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, because we are an ascending economy. So the next 10, 20, 30 years, even if you take China as an example, right? There has to be some parallel kind of drawn. I'm just drawing that parallel. I think where we are, where China was in 2003, 2004, number of aircrafts, number of airports, right? But the multiplier effect, because of the digitization that has happened right now in India, we will compound much faster. Now, when you look at, let's say, the next 5 or 10 years, this is going to be a compounding effect or a multiplier effect faster than China.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
How does such a big airline, I know there are another 400 aircrafts on orders, how do you even keep pace with this intensity?
Yeah, no, it's you're spot on. History has demonstrated that. I mean, I think it took Southwest 35 or 36 years to reach 100 million customers, and that was incredibly fast in a time frame where in the US low cost was coming up. 35 years, a record. Books have been written about it.
But there was also a market in the US.
And IndiGo, last year, when we were still 17 and we are 18 now, it took IndiGo 17 years. So 35, 36 at Northwest versus 17 years. So I would say double speed. So there's a tendency that these sort of milestones are being achieved even faster. We have laid out the plan for IndiGo to double by the end of the decade. So we go from 100 million to 200.
Say, let's say 200 million.
So just as a ballpark number. So that means that we have to do in the next 6-7 years what we did in the previous 17 years.
Yeah.
So that's again an acceleration.
Yeah.
There are certain things which you can't accelerate I mean, the flight has to, there's
For
a
sure.
flying time.
Yeah.
The planes will not fly faster. On the contrary, I would say it's getting more congested at airports. So digitization really is going to be an incredible important part of that, because a lot of the processes we're having on the ground in booking, in case of irregular operations, it would require a skill which can only be addressed with digital tools and digital support. So very much to your point, India is at the point where China was years ago. Today, India has roughly 750 planes in operation. China has, I think, close to 3,000.
Right now. But with 2004, was the same.
Exactly.
750.
So then the landmass is different.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of points, but we feel pretty confident that with that Indian growth and Indian market out there, that our ambition to double by the end of the decade will be there. But clearly, a lot has to be done. So we have to train people. We have to safeguard our safety. We need to make sure that the infrastructure is up and running, and we have to use digital tools wherever possible.
Yeah. For the non-aviation listeners who are tuning in and listening to us, Peter, they don't understand the scale. Give us a glimpse of how does IndiGo maintain this consistency? It's surreal.
No, the scale is enormous. So we serve a little over 3 lakh customers a day. So every day we have 3 lakh customers, and actually more than 3 lakh now.
And 400 departures?
And 2,000 flights we operate a day. So that's, cut it by 24 hours, and you do the math, and you quickly know how many...
By the minute and by the second.
By the second, a plane is taking off. So that process itself, it never stops. It's probably a bit slower in night hours, but it never stops. And that scale in itself requires an incredible, and that's probably going back to the very initial part of this conversation, what attracts you so much in aviation. Yet all these 3 lakh customers, we promise to give them a courteous and hassle-free service.
Absolutely.
And they don't care. There's 1,999 other flights. They care about their flight and
on
their
that
flight
day at that time,
and rightfully so, because that's the customer promise we're having. So in that dynamic, you need to have incredible strong procedures, incredible strong. We call it SOP, standard operating procedures. You need to have a strong company culture. Here, this is the custodian, the cradle, if you wish, of our company culture. So in that sense. And I find it the charm of our industry. It's an incredible logistic complex exercise because that 350 planes are rotating all over the place. So if it's monsoon in Mumbai,
it's summers,
or it's too hot in Leh or too cold in Leh. In that entire dynamic, so we have an entire operations control center where with big screens and planes everywhere. That's where the heart of the operation is being monitored. And at the same time, we have thousands of cabin crew making sure that you and all the other customers are having a courteous and hassle-free service.
And the fact is that you have not only optimized the process and I think innovating those processes time and again, but the fact is the customer service is just getting better and better and better. The scale of, again, 3 lakh, what we don't understand outside of aviation is, I go back to the earlier point, you don't own anything. You don't own the real estate. You don't own the airspace.
No.
The only thing that you own is the plane. And that's where you can control. And the weather outside that also you can't control.
No.
And
I wish we could.
I wish we could. Yeah, you're so right. From that perspective. When you're going to be inducting another 400 aircrafts, and God bless us, in the next 5-10 years. I do not know the time scale. Digitization is one aspect. Do you see a lot of service innovation also happening simultaneously with the digitization? Because the 3 lakh would be 1 million passengers at some stage.
Back to the number of planes we're having. So today, IndiGo is having the world's largest order book. And of course, that's important for IndiGo, but I would say it's even more important for India, because that will allow us to fulfill our purpose, giving wings to the nation and fulfilling people's dreams and aspirations and all. So that will be there. But the India of today is no longer the same as the India of 18 years ago when
True.
IndiGo was founded. And IndiGo, I would be dare to say that IndiGo has not only revolutionized but also democratized air travel in India.
Absolutely.
You know, there's millions and millions of first-time flyers who could not fly before who have access to air travel now. But as India today is a different India than 18 years ago, we know that in 6 years from now,
It'll be a completely
it will be again another India. So what we have decided recently to enrich our product offerings. So we start with a tailor-made business product on the nation's busiest and business routes. The first route obviously is Delhi-Mumbai. And the philosophy behind this, you know, in India, we need to continue to work on two dimensions really. One is the dimension of size and scale. You know, the percentage of Indians with a passport is still single digit.
So right.
The percentage of people having access to air travel is still low compared to other parts of the world. So we continue to attract millions and millions of first-time flyers, and that will require a lot of new planes, airports and all.
Yeah.
So that's one dimension. The other dimension, which is more complicated, is making sure that set of travelers who also have now new aspirations, different aspirations, are being served. So what are we doing for that set of consumers? We further internationalize our network.
Yeah.
Some of our recent additions have been, you know, Baku, Tbilisi, Almaty, Tashkent.
I think you have opened up Central Asia for
It
India.
is big success. You know, a lot of Indian consumers.
Nobody knew that part of the world existed.
And now people go, you know, we see articles in newspapers, where can you go for 1 lakh rupees?
Go to Uzbekistan.
So one is the internationalization. The other one is our tailor-made business product on those routes, both for, I would say, the traditional business traveler, but also the increasing aspirational Indian traveler. So we skip it from some of the classic business stuff and we tailor make it. And thirdly is our loyalty program, which we have recently introduced. So these aspects are a bit of a long answer, but these aspects are helping us to address these service levels.
Yeah. I think I'm recounting one of the economists in India who spoke about the fact, and I found this statistics very interesting, Peter. They said that every $1 trillion India adds to its economy, and we are adding $1 trillion now every 3 years. We are compounding at that effect, right? 100 million Indians will move from wherever they are to the next level of the per capita.
Yeah.
Right? 100 million shift. Now, this kind of shift in 3 or 4 years, again, as I say, it took China about 15 years from 2004 to 2015. And hopefully, if everything is fine, and I like to believe, I believe that in their story, it's that shift which will happen. But what is more interesting is that still from 2,800 per capita will go to, let's say, 4,500, 5,000 the next 10 years. But the top 10 percentile would be richer than the Americans, richer than, let's say, a lot of other, I would say, developed nations who are, unfortunately, some of them are descending. Yeah. Although they're developed, but they're descending economies, not the ascending economies like that. This shift itself is mind-blowing. I always say, whatever you see in India is true. The opposite is also true.
Yeah.
So you and me, we can think about, let's say, those 400 aircraft which are coming. But what if, you have 500 million Indians in the next 5 years who are able to afford this? Yeah. And suddenly you'll find, again, the supply constraint. The demand is there, but the supply is a constraint because that's just the nature.
Yeah. No, so that's why, and I think that's increasingly being addressed in India. That's why we should look at the entire ecosystem.
So right.
So I mean, it's a fair point to say what we own is the aircraft.
Yeah.
We lease it, but in general, we own it. We're not owning the airport. We're not owning the airspace. We're not owning some of the security things. So we're not owning that. So what you need eventually, we're not owning the maintenance.
You're not opening the conveyor belts. You can't control what time the bag comes out.
And we don't have to really. But what we do need to do is to have a sort of ecosystem type of approach when it comes to how do we make sure that these numbers, which you rightfully are addressing, are be accommodated. And I mean, closer to home for you, that would mean a lot for the hospitality business as well.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of these cities where the number of hotels are not today where where the demand is.
Yeah.
And I think that number is will, and that will require people, will require investments, will require collaborations, and that's going to be a very exciting journey.
Would I be safe to say IndiGo is that customer obsessed airline? So you keep the customer right in the middle, and every aspect is tailored around that customer.
Yeah, I think very important. When IndiGo was created 18 years ago, there were 3 customer promises: on-time performance, affordable fares, and courteous and hassle-free service. What we have added over the last 2 years is an unparalleled network.
Yeah.
That's partly because of the network is there, but also partly because we find more and more consumers who are using different parts of our network. So we are basically, and especially now with our internationalization, we become, wherever you go, go IndiGo.
Yeah.
So, we basically serve all those needs. What we have said going forward is that these 3 original, added with number 4, customer promise, will remain the very core of what we are. I think the moment you start losing that very focus, you start losing your customers. And are we doing everything perfect for all 3 lakh customers? No, we learn every day, and we try to be better and improve and address where we have shortcomings. But it is fair to say that was the very heart of IndiGo when it was created. It is now when we are 18 years, and it will be there in the future as well.
For a couple of minutes, Peter, let's just kind of talk about the fact that, and it's a mindset, you may differ with me, but with 60% market share and continuously, I would say, route expansion, and in that expansion, larger chunk of that expansion as well. Does IndiGo come with, and in a nice way I say that, does it come with that monopolistic mindset? And let me explain what I mean by monopolistic mindset. It essentially means that every day we are talking about scale, we are talking about share of market, we are talking about processes, optimization, and every day we are disrupting our own imagination. And that's what I believe, what I call monopolistic mindset. Coke is an example of that. Nike is an example of that, right? I believe IndiGo is an example of that. And do you see that?
Well, I don't like the word monopolistic. And let me tell you why I don't like it. Because first of all, we're not obsessed by whatever that market share number is, and every month I can see it. But I'm not. So we don't have a target on it. We don't have an ambition. So we're not obsessed by it. Secondly, and probably more importantly, if you start to break it down, then if you look to the busiest routes of the nation, we're not having 60%. We are in very significant competition
with a lot of players,
to what I would say is probably one of the world's most competitive markets and one of the most
low yield markets as well.
I think the correct way of phrasing is value conscious market, but it's extremely price sensitive. And I challenge everyone every now and then, just pick your app, look at our app and see what's the fare levels. And then indeed what IndiGo has done, it has created a lot of unique new routes, partly as formed the scheme of the government to support the tier 3 cities, but also very much so to start creating that network in the nation. Then you can call it monopolistic. I would call it we're enabling Indians to fly. Everyone has access to those routes. Everyone can do it. But IndiGo is actually doing it. So we're not sort of doing that for that purpose. Where I think it's important is that as a company, you always stay truthful to your customer promise, and you remain self-critical. IndiGo disrupted the industry 18 years ago, and it did over time. And there's always going to be new disruptors. And even though we're a relatively young company, there's going to be new disruptors, which is good. That keeps us on our toes, keeps us alert for what we're doing. I don't think anyone in the company would have the arrogance to say, we don't care. No, none of that. And for the consumer, it's good because there's choice after all.
We're going to go to the second last segment of the conversation, Peter. Love to hear your thoughts on a few things that I believe would resonate with our viewers, especially those who are aspiring to build careers, right? Looking back, and this is more in the reflection round. If you were 25 years old today, right, looking back, what advice would you give your 25-year-old self? And you know, there's another literally 30 years of, I would say, professional life in front of you. What advice would you give today when you look back?
I hope you allow me to. It's to say here. It depends a little bit who's your audience, and the audience in Europe, I would say, embrace the unknown. Embrace the unknown. Go for it.
They were risk takers.
Exactly, because the European,
but the social fabric was also there.
In general, the European societies are at a certain level where people become more risk averse.
Correct.
And life is good.
Yeah.
So
because there's social security.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of opportunities, and also embrace the unknown. That would be there. I would say here in India, there's probably for those 25 years old. I haven't found a lot of hesitation to embrace the unknown. People are extremely eager, ambitious, want to move forward. So that piece of advice there would be not so much embrace the unknown, because people would do it any which way, but would be more like build up experience, build up. There's an enormous inertia, an enormous sort of impatience almost. And I think the steps you have to do in your career, you need to build up in-depth knowledge, in-depth experience, in-depth. And I guess that's, therefore I would say, embrace the unknown at some part, but also...
See, I call it the conflicted generation from that perspective. The fact, I don't blame them. They have access to that information today. They have access to, I would say, a lot of gloss and glamour, what they consume on their phones, either through Instagram or TikToks or whatever. And somewhere they believe what they see at that point in time is true, but they don't see, I would say, the life experiences, the life struggles that have kind of happened behind. So you're actually seeing the end product, but you don't see the 30 years.
There's this saying, and I love it actually. There's no elevator to success. You have to take the stairs.
You have to take
and that, I think that part of you have to take the stairs is I think a very important part. And the ambition and the energy to take the stairs it's everywhere. It's one of the charms of living and working in India. That energy is everywhere, but you have to take the stairs.
And this is my own observation as well. So what India has today are like about, I would say, literally 200,000 social media influencers, and good is there, right? For whatever reason. I believe they provide entertainment. They are 2-minute superheroes for the people who are consuming them. But unfortunately, they don't see the real superheroes like you as well. And I say it in a very nice way. What I mean by that is genuine role models. 1992, 93, you started off as a ramp. You went all over the place. Literally, you climbed laterally, vertically, constant, every aspect of aviation, I think. Besides flying a plane, I'm sure you know how to fly a plane as well.
No, I don't actually.
But
I always say there's 2 jobs in the company, which for sure I cannot. There's many more, but 2 for sure I cannot. One is flying the plane and the other is maintaining the plane. And again, there's many more, but those are the two visible, most visible.
So they need those authentic role models, right? Because I think, in the culinary world today, just to let you know, apart from whatever fusion cooking that you're seeing, the slow cooking is also coming back. You see? So it's the old world is trying to come back, and people want those genuine role models as well. Now, to the same 25-year-old aspirant, aviation enthusiast, Indian youth, what would you tell them? What are the 3 skills they should possess, in your opinion?
I think curiosity is one. Aviation is a great place to work because you can do so many different things. But in order to be intrigued by different things, you need to have curiosity. I mean, we're here in the training center. One of the rooms is called curiosity. I think that's one of the very important aspects of having that career. Secondly, you need to have a affiliation, a connection, a passion for the product itself.
True.
And again, it doesn't matter where you work, but I cannot be more pleased by walking into different departments and if you ask people what are you doing, I'm giving wings to the nation. And that's not only the pilots who are flying the plane or the cabin crew or the mechanic. That's all of us. So that passion for the product, I would say, is another incredibly important part. And so curiosity, passion for the product itself, and working with people, I think is another
collaboration, the whole aspect.
Because aviation probably, the success, it's a classical example where the collective efforts leads to that result. So collaboration and the atmosphere of collaboration, and of course, internally sometimes we need to collaborate better, and we should. Always we should look at it. But in essence, that's an incredibly important part.
And I may just add one or two aspects more, and this is generally for everyone. And I say the ability to take risk. Just be fearless. It's okay. Do not fear failure, which I would say not call it failure, but falling. Because if you fall, you need to get up. So the ability to take risk and just be fearless about it. What can possibly go wrong?
Yeah, but that's again, it's different roles, right? So for pilots, you want our pilots to remain within our SOPs. This is the SOP, and you want them to be very and I'm incredibly proud on what we have achieved. When we look at, let's say, our marketing team, and they come up with some sort of new gimmick, let's try it. Why not?
Quirky. I love the marketing of IndiGo.
So I think there's different roles which have different levels of that. But for yourself, and if we forget about the role, but for your own sort of career development, I would be mighty pleased if we could have more internal sort of moves, more people taking up a job from one to the next.
For sure.
And I think their airlines in general are sort of traditional in terms of people stay in their own verticals, if you wish. And again, I've been blessed with the opportunities which I got by moving from different parts. True. And I think that in itself is such an enriching experience because it forces you to learn. It forces you to start basically all over again and take the experience from the past and do it in the new.
And maybe we spoke about this before the podcast. Is maybe this university that you have kind of created, right? Maybe this can help them make those lateral moves in terms of their competency building.
Absolutely. So we have started also recently, not only, let me call it functional training. When we have check-in agents or mechanics, we have very functional oriented training. But more and more, we have leadership programs. We have what we call elevate programs, so people get inspiration from different angles. And I think that's one of the assets and one of the essence for a company of our size and growth potential that we need to broaden that horizon.
Peter, if I have to teleport you, let's say you're 64.
64, 10 years from now.
10 years from now. 12 years for me, but 10 years for you. What do you think you'll be doing?
I have a habit, good or bad, as for others to judge, to not to look too far ahead.
Okay.
I was CEO at KLM. It was a company where I worked 30 years and sort of breeding. And then the IndiGo would I have imagined 5 years ago that I had now the privilege, because that's how I feel it, to be part of one of the world's fastest growing airlines in one of the most vibrant, if not the most vibrant part of the world.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
So
you can't plan that far off, right?
So if you say, what are you going to do in 10 years from now? I don't know. I could still very well be the CEO of IndiGo.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely.
But I just don't know.
I would love to see you. I'll tell you why. That would be about 800, 900 aircrafts, right? Or 1,000 aircrafts. It would be as big as Southwest or I think Air China, if I'm not mistaken.
There's no reason. There's no reason why IndiGo could not have that. India deserves airlines matching the size and the potential of the nation itself.
Yeah.
And for a long time, for a whole host of different reasons, that wasn't the case. I think now we're at the cusp of that being and becoming the case. Still, the further you're away from India, the lower the market share of Indian carriers is. So I think there's still an entire world out there for us to take. I think the orientation of the Indian service orientation, the Indian consumers in general are a set of consumers who know what they want, who voice what they want. If we can be effective and successful here, we can be effective and successful in other parts of the world, right?
Absolutely right.
So if you take that as a starting point, and then with the growth of the Indian economy, with the incoming tourism, with the Indian diaspora all over the world, all these aspects making it actually for us a very solid, basis to build our expansion on.
In fact, when I'm kind of talking to you, I'm just kind of thinking about if I had to just write a headline in 10 years from now, and you're still in IndiGo, and that would be Pieter Elbers leading 150,000 colleagues and connected India from north, south, east, west, and gave indeed the wings what India deserved. That would be your legacy.
We do it today in India. 88 domestic destinations. It's a fantastic number. International today we have 33, soon 34, and by the end of this year we'll be crossing the end of this financial year we'll be crossing the 40 mark. But that does not yet make us a global airline. So I think we aspire to move more global. We have ordered the Airbus XLR, which will bring us to parts of Europe, further into Asia, and the Airbus
But
350.
would that be direct or would it be via hub?
No, it will be all direct.
Nice.
And I think for India today, a lot of consumers have to connect at hubs, mostly outside India, really. And I think the opportunity we will be providing is to have direct flights from different parts of India and using the geography of India to have that network. So step one is going to be somewhere next year when the Airbus XLR is coming in. It's actually today is step one, but step two is when that new plane coming in. And then when the 350 is coming in 27-ish, at that point in time, the world will be even better connected.
And these are all long range, extended range?
These are all extended range planes. So that would mean that we are able to connect directly India to many more parts of the world. And again, that's why whatever we do today are in fact building blocks. So, your question is, what would you do when you're 64? If I say, what would IndiGo look like in 2030? So it's not 10 years, but it's 6 years from now. I think that at that point in time, we're double in size, and we are establishing a global aviation player. And again, by that time, the Indian economy is well established as the third largest economy in the world, and the Indian sort of economy will be connected much deeper and much more integrated to other parts of the world, and that in itself will further stimulate air travel.
I couldn't be more proud of you, and I couldn't be more proud of India, Pieter. This is the last segment, right? This is going to be a little fun. I'm going to have a little fun.
Good.
Right? Okay? Biggest risk you have ever taken. What is the biggest risk you've ever taken?
I'm not a big risk taker, I guess.
Biggest calculated risk you have ever taken?
Call it a leap of faith.
Oh, right.
So I would say leaving Europe, moving to India, leaving the company, moving. So, I changed the company, I changed the country, so that was a leap of faith.
True.
In hindsight, I could not have been more happy with that leap of faith I've been taking.
You've seen literally 4 decades of aviation now, right?
Yeah.
You're into the 4th decade. What is that one aviation innovation you wish existed?
I think the sustainability challenge is a big challenge for the industry in total. We are not having this, so we work on long-term solutions.
For sure,
but if you said, what is the one thing you would wish? I think that is what I wish to be.
When you're talking to these large Airbuses and Boeings, do you think that's coming in? Do you think in the next 5-7 years?
At one point in time, there's going to be some technical progress, and some of them work now on the hydrogen elements. But the sheer law of nature, almost.
For sure.
If you want to bring up that weight to a certain
I
height.
know what you're saying. It just requires, yeah.
It
You're
just,
so right. Yeah.
just
It's
requires.
physics.
So and you know,
Sometimes you just can't tinker with physics.
but I'm sure that mankind has proven over time to be innovative. So I'm confident that at one
Something
point in
would
time
come up.
some
Yeah,
solution will
yeah,
come up.
yeah.
But if you ask me what's the one thing you wish which would be there like now,
Yeah.
then that's what I wish.
Apart from India today as one of the largest, I think we are the third largest aviation.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Which is the most emerging market after India, if you can tell me?
No, I think a market like Indonesia, market like Saudi Arabia.
But they aren't domestic again. They are largely international?
Well, Indonesia is a lot of domestic as well.
Okay.
Indonesia is a lot of domestic as well. Saudi Arabia is more international.
Got it.
So I think those are markets which are also growing fast.
So apart from Schiphol and apart from Delhi T3, Bangalore and the Bombay airport, which is your favorite airport in the world? Do you like anyone in the Middle East?
You know, it's efficient airports.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't call it my favorite
Your
because
favorite.
we will be overflying that
Okay.
in order to serve our Indian customers direct flights from India to the rest of the world.
Okay.
Maybe Seoul is a great airport.
Yeah, I haven't been there. So
Seoul
yeah.
is very efficient.
Yeah. Somehow I like Shanghai one, right? I
yeah.
don't know. Yeah,
Yeah,
Shanghai,
but-
the new
but-
airport is excellent.
Is also, but
Yeah.
Seoul, I would say, is it has this mixture of connections and
What about
efficiency.
Turkish airport? I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's also a good
that's also a
airport,
really
yeah.
good airport. Yeah, yeah. One aviation myth that you would like to debunk, if there is anyone.
You know, sometimes people speak about it like it's all glamour.
Yeah, Jesus.
At the end of the day, you
It's
know,
nothing glamorous.
it's a business which attracts a lot of attention, but there's a lot of hard work for the
Jesus
people.
Christ.
And if I see our mechanics or our loaders when it's monsoon in Mumbai and they're loading the bags and all, or there's not much glamorous.
Somewhere I kind of read, if I'm again, I don't know whether this is correct or not. I think there are about 100 or 110 friction points before the passenger boards the aircraft, and if everything is fine, and even if, let's say, Peter is ensuring that everything is fine, at the end of the day, that marshaller is the most important guy out there. Without him, the aircraft doesn't move.
Exactly. So the combination of all these aspects, and so I find it a fantastic business. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in.
Yeah.
But it's not a glamorous business.
Yeah.
So yeah.
A leader you have admired, and why?
You know, I have not specifically one leader. I take it
Bits and pieces of a lot of
exactly
people.
for me looking to leaders around the world.
Yeah.
And forgive me to make that comparison. It's a bit like a South Indian thali. You know, you take bits and pieces
Of
and
everything.
and you
I like
combine
that.
it. And I think there are some aviation leaders which I see what they have done, and how Ed Bastian at Delta, for example, has created this wonderful, great company.
True.
One can take lessons from it, and
Yeah.
I think then there's global leaders which are, have gone in history with, creating momentum, and I guess everyone speaking about JFK in the US and
True.
how we're going to put the man on the moon and
Yeah.
everyone. So I think there's a couple of those examples. But for me, even throughout my career, the South Indian thali, I pick bits and pieces
From everybody.
I
and-
combine
and-
it, and so, that's
Yeah.
and I think more importantly, it has to suit you.
Yeah.
Even if there's someone you say,
Yeah.
wow, that she or he has everything.
It should.
Then still, if it
Yeah.
doesn't suit you, it doesn't make any sense. So therefore, I believe
So throughout the years, energy from this person, some wisdom from this person,
Correct.
some mentorship from this person,
working
some
methodology.
coaching, yeah.
I had a boss who was extremely structured at one point in time. So that's the way I'm
Yeah.
going to do it. I'm going to follow that structure.
Yeah.
So good, that fitted me. I do that. Someone else did more like that. I do it. So it's South Indian thali.
What's the personal ritual before you take a big decision?
I try to pretty much have my morning run and morning exercise. And that is pretty much every day. But I'm even more focused and almost religious on it when I know there's going to be a tough or difficult day with lengthy meetings. I want to make sure that I've covered that part.
But tell me something, because I run as well, and I've been running for the last 30 years now. I'm not a marathon runner. I indulge myself either on the treadmill or maybe 7K, 8K. I find it spiritual. I find it that I take all my decisions for the day when I'm in that zone. Is it the same with you?
Very similar. I mostly treadmill.
You mostly treadmill, yeah?
Outside. Usually when I'm in different cities, I try, but not every city is suitable for that. And for me, it is maybe not so much spiritual, but it is more creating structure, priority, focus. Oh yeah, this I have to do, that I have to do, and then I'm sort of, I've burnt my first set of calories of the day, and I'm sort of ready to go, because the rest of the day you're sitting a lot, but it gives me so much energy. So it's that's my ritual, which I'm even more firm on it to have it done on difficult days.
Is there any particular regional Indian cuisine that you have taken fascination to?
That's
apart from the South Indian thali.
That is probably one of the most asked questions to me.
Okay.
Which Indian food do you like most?
Hence I said very regional, very specific.
But here in Delhi itself,
have you developed that palate for Indian food?
Oh, I love it.
Super.
No, I love it. But if you ask me, make a list where at, then it's a bit more challenge. But if you have a proper chole bhature, I love it. I enjoy.
So your palate is okay with that.
I enjoy it.
Peter, we are absolutely towards the end of the program, and if I have to kind of sum it up again, as I would sum it up, from the following: that here is a powerful leader, and I say it, an impactful leader. So when I say powerful, I don't mean it in a disdain way, but very impactful leader and a very humble leader. And at least the Indian generations, the youth who are looking at it, they're going to take, the key takeaway from them would be this: the fact that you're disciplined, fact that you're resilient, fact that you're humble. At the same time, you are a broad vision kind of a person, but executing with your colleagues. I think would be the key takeaway.
And thank you so much
And thank you so much. But I look into that camera and I say, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed bringing this to you. He's one of my most favorite people. I've met him 4 times, but I don't know, there's something about him which I truly kind of look up to as well. So to everyone, it's salam, namaste, adab, and sat sri akal. Thank you.